It's another exciting episode here at On the Path, and we are speaking about the things that matter this season, and one of them is sex trafficking. Coming up next, we are talking with Mike and Felicia Fischoff of fightforfreedom.ca, our incredible season 3 sponsors, and we are pulling off the covers on what's going on in this industry, what we have wrong, the misconceptions, what we need to learn, how we can figure out the signs of someone that's been sex trafficked, how you can make a difference as a freedom fighter in your own local community, and also, more importantly, the incredible on-the-grounds work that Fight for Freedom is doing, not only in this nation, but in America and the Philippines, guys. You do not want to miss this conversation. We are going to make a difference. Available on all podcast platforms, or subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you on the path. Let's go.
You're listening to On the Path podcast with Cheryl Nemhard, brought to you by Fight for Freedom, educating, empowering, and equipping community members by raising awareness and training others surrounding the issues of sex trafficking. For more information or to donate, go to fightforfreedom.ca. Follow Cheryl Nemhard on all social media platforms.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On the Path podcast. I am so excited about this episode. Let me tell you, it's been a long time coming. I'll tell you why I am so buzzed, because I am speaking with not only incredible individuals, you're going to get to know their story and get to know the passion behind what they do, but I am speaking with our key sponsors for season 3. Come on. I am talking to the visionaries behind Fight for Freedom, and I cannot wait for you guys to get to know more about them. Throughout this whole season, you've been hearing little snippets about what they do in every intro, every outro, but today we get to hear the heart behind these two incredible individuals who are changing the landscape in Canada, doing work in anti-sex trafficking, anti-sex exploitation. I cannot wait for you to meet them. Let me tell you a little bit about these guys. So Mike and Felicia Fischoff are the co-founders and Canadian directors for Fight for Freedom. Felicia's a mom of 2 wonderful boys. She has her bachelor's in social work and a BA in international development studies. She is also, I love that, she's got a certificate for spiritual direction from the EMAS. Did I say that right?
MAS.
The Emmaus. I love that. The Emmaus Formation Center. She's currently pursuing her Master's of Divinity in Clinical Counseling. And Mike Fischoff, in response to a conversation that he had, and I can't wait to hear about this one, with a survivor from sex trafficking all the way in 2009, that prompted a work that would help those caught in sex trafficking, and they founded Fight for Freedom. And now together, alongside a team of dedicated individuals, volunteers, staff, Mike and Felicia are reaching out to strip clubs, massage parlors, prisons, hotels, online platforms, and even the streets. Yes, they're hitting the streets all across Canada, helping, and America and the Philippines, guys. So let me say that again, all across Canada, America, and the Philippines, hoping to identify and give support to individuals impacted by the sex industry and by trafficking. So we need a drum roll. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike and Felicia Fischoff.
Happy to have you guys. Having us.
And whoop, whoop. Welcome to On the Path. And for those that are watching online, if you notice right here, we got a little snazzy logo here. I am so excited to be with you guys. Listen, I was saying this to my team, you can walk down the street and you can see people and try to get a sense of their lives, but you never know, like, the incredible work or stories behind them. I look at the two of you guys, and what you have accomplished so far is unbelievable. And I know that God is just getting started. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about, let's kick it off with a little bit about you, your story, and how this whole vision of Fight for Freedom came to be. Maybe Mike, we'll kick off with you.
Yeah, sure. It all started in 2009. I was working for an inner city Christian organization and just having an amazing time reaching out to families, young people in sometimes difficult community systems. And out of this, there was a young man who just was worried about a friend of his. And he said, would you please meet with this individual? And so I gathered a small team and we met with her. And never before had I felt such an intense, just form of almost darkness that was around this person. I knew this person was in deep trouble, but I had no idea what it was that she was actually facing. And so we as a team continued to meet with her and build relationship for over a year. And finally, she felt comfortable to share her story. And her story didn't come out all in one sitting. It was, a little bit here and a little bit there. But essentially, her story was that in her elementary school, a student teacher began to sexually abuse her. And when she left that school to go to a middle school, he began to pimp her, sell her to his friends to make money. She never saw a penny. It was completely through coercion and manipulation and fear-based control. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe that this was happening in our city with people that I, was working with, like you were mentioning, seeing on a daily basis, but had no idea some of the things that they were really facing. And so I'd done a little bit of anti-trafficking work previously in the Philippines and India and Thailand, but didn't realize the intensity of what this means in Toronto. And so our team quickly formed to pray for this person, to help give supports for them in their exit. It was a long story of, authorities being contacted and tons of things, but eventually she was able to get out into a good safe house. And today, just a completely different person than the person we met more than 10 years ago. And Fight for Freedom slowly began out of that one person's story. Different young people began to approach me with a heart and a passion to fight this injustice. And so we began meeting and mostly praying and coming up with a little bit of vision. What can we do to really combat this on the Canadian landscape? And many people were saying, we need to stop just waiting for us to come across people. We need to go out and begin identifying people and building relationship. And so I never knew that I would be starting an anti-sex trafficking organization, but we just felt the Lord was on this and we just had to go with his move. And so long story short, 10 plus years later, we now have an effort to combat this injustice on several fronts. The education component, bringing awareness and prevention to young people so they understand the issues. The outreach component, reaching out into these locations where sex trafficking is known to happen, building relationship, and finally our aftercare component. So working with those who are ready to leave in a survivor care platform. And so that's a bit of my story of getting involved with Fight for Freedom.
Absolutely incredible. Felicia, what about you?
Yeah, so I always had a passion to work with individuals who have faced traumatic situations. Growing up in a family where there was domestic violence and abuse, that was usually my interest in school, to study about, violence against women. And when I took my second degree in international development studies, it was really funny. The professor actually said, hey, I want everyone on the spot to just give me a topic that you're going to write your assignment on for the rest of the year. And I was like, oh, okay, no warning or nothing. But so I just remember praying in that moment as she was going around the circle. And I'm like, God, what do you want me to write about? Like, I usually focus on domestic violence. Should I research more on this? And he's like, it's clear as day, I want you to write about human trafficking. I'm like, human trafficking? Okay. Even when I told my professor, she was taken off guard. She's like, huh, okay. And later on, she's like, I want you to focus on sex trafficking because human trafficking is really a broad umbrella. And yeah, the rest is history. I did my research assignment on the cross-border trafficking between Nepal and India. And that's where my eyes opened up with regards to, what's happening across the world in red light districts and how women are further exploited. And so, yeah, the rest is history. A few months later, I met Mike, who said that he was doing a work in Toronto. He was journeying alongside this individual that he mentioned. And then we, along with this a team of volunteers that we were with, started supporting this individual, helping her to find that safe house and counseling and stuff like that. And so that's really where it started. Just obedience. I didn't even want to go back to school after I was done social work, but God's like, you need to go back. So I just see God's hand on, even our journeys and paths up until the point of starting Fight for Freedom.
Absolutely incredible. The origin story behind it is so, so good. And you know what a lot of people won't pick up, for those that are listening in and watching, this is actual, this is real life. They are married, y'all.
Yeah.
They are superheroes married together, doing this work together with a beautiful family. So I wanted to kind of start off with a very personal question for you guys. Um, how has 2020 and 2021 been for you as a family? How has it affected Fight for Freedom? Give me some of those, and what are the lessons that you're learning during this time too?
Yeah, this past 18 months, no one would have expected that we would be here. It has
Right.
been a difficult journey. And I would say even for ourselves, and especially those that we are working with, I think there was a real hit with mental health.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of people struggling with thoughts and anxieties and feelings of loneliness and isolation like never before. And also closure of tons of social gatherings and what that means for all of us. So we thankfully have some really good communities around us. And so we were able to cling to them in those times of, 3 months in your home alone. And but many of the people we work with, it was a very, very challenging season. What we also did find is that many people began to question, what are they doing in their life and what would they like to see it look like? And we have seen actually within the organization over the last 18 months, more individuals leave situations of exploitation than before. We've also seen many come to know the Lord, many, many stories of people embracing Jesus through this difficult time. And so even through all of the turmoil and the tension and everything, God is shining through. And he is very much working in the lives of the people that we meet on a regular basis.
Oh, good. So good, Felicia.
Yeah, just to even see the way that God provides. He provides for each of the individuals, even in the midst of, economic downturn and things that are closed. Like God still provides, food for his children. And, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or
Mm.
seed beg for bread. And honestly, like the way that God supports survivors, even during a global pandemic, it's moving and it's phenomenal. And yes, there's so many challenges, that survivors are facing. If life is difficult for us, those who are, facing mental health challenges or trauma, and it just runs so deep, and isolation doesn't make that any easier. So I'm just so grateful even for our staff team that decided to journey alongside all of these survivors during the season. And they really appreciate it that there are people that care for them, that check in with them, and it not only affects them, but their families as well.
Exactly. And what about you, just as a couple, just maybe give me what's one big lesson that came through or has come up for you guys during this whole time?
Yeah, for me, it absolutely has been the importance of me to get that special time with the Lord apart from everything else. So whether it's going for a long walk, out of the house and just kind of giving him all my fears, my worries, my anxieties, and trusting that he's going to come and to fill me and to give me the strength for the next day. And sometimes it's day to day. Some days that walk is a lot longer than other days. But yeah, just to realize that his strength is there for us if we tap into it.
Yeah, so good. Well, I cannot wait to talk to you guys about Fight for Freedom and really dig in so that people can understand the heart and the determination, the focus behind all that you do. You guys are really paving the way in terms of freedom work in this country, and I'd love to just kind of start with how does that look day to day? Like, what are the ways in which Fight for Freedom helps and addresses the areas of sexual exploitation in the nation? You talked about the 4 pillars. I heard 4 things, I think. Maybe we could break those down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So trafficked people are forced into various forms of sexual exploitation, whether it be through providing sexual services like in strip clubs and massage parlors, in the production of pornography. It may occur in other locations like pop-up brothels or even the streets or hotel rooms, Airbnb. condominiums. I mean, the list just goes on. And so we recognize those areas that are kind of high risk for things like trafficking. And so like we mentioned, we have those 4 pillars, or you've mentioned, and the first one is education. We realized very early on that if we don't educate young people to the realities and the dangers, that this can just continue to be a prevalent issue in our city, in our nation, in our world. And so we've created lots of different forms of curriculum to speak to different types of people, whether it be junior high age or high school or college campuses or church groups or different community groups, specifically within low-income communities, and just causing new awareness. This is what trafficking looks like. Here are the signs, here are the dangers, here's how to protect your friends if you notice something. So our education platform has just grown tremendously over the last 10 years. Also mentioned, we started very much with outreach, reaching out into these locations, and that has grown exponentially across Canada in various establishments in various cities. We also have a work in the Philippines that was started quite a few years ago, and also now we actually just launched in Chicago as well. And so just identifying where are the places that are not being reached currently by other organizations, and how could we develop a team of volunteers to be able to make a difference in that location. And then the last one is that aftercare, the third one is aftercare, like I mentioned. So rehabilitation, housing, basic needs being met of the individual. I mean, it could be anything from food to clothing to transportation, to educational support and assistance. And then of course, the more professional services like therapy or spiritual direction, pastoral care. And then we also offer friendships. And so opportunities for people to meet new individuals who can support them in their journey and in their walk. And out of that aftercare program, we've seen many, many individuals who've come through out of very, very difficult situations of exploitation, and through time and through investment and through healing, just really becoming just totally different people in an amazing transformative way. And then the last arm, or the last focus, is partnerships. We know that we cannot do this work alone. We have got to be working with other organizations. So we try to work with churches and parachurches and other organizations fighting this injustice, so that we're using a collaborative approach rather than just coming with our own answers all the time, and working together with others. So that's how we attempt to address the subject.
That's incredible. And you cover it from all angles. That's what I love, is that you're reaching, you're repairing hearts, you're making new inroads for them with rehabilitation, you're educating as well. There's aftercare involved. Like it's a holistic approach, isn't it?
Yeah, we really believe in that wraparound care. And one thing that I've noticed is that for survivors, it's just important to have someone who believes in them. And I love that Fight for Freedom gets to be those individuals who can just sit down and say, I'm here for you. I believe you. I believe your story. How can we support you? Yeah, I'm really grateful that we can provide that for individuals.
And, you know, when I think about this whole industry of sex trafficking and sexual exploitation, I have to be honest, I think we get a lot wrong. We get a lot wrong. There's a lot of misunderstanding, misconceptions in and around it. I'd love for you to shed some light. What is it that we don't know, or what do we need to know? Maybe that's better to say. What do we need to know about the industry, those that are escaping from it, that maybe we have mislabeled or misunderstood?
Yeah, I feel like the industry is very glamorized. Our culture is very sexualized. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that, yes, some individuals do go into the industry willingly, but it doesn't mean that they can leave willingly. And there's a huge difference there. Yes, there might be freedom and choice, but when your choice is taken away, there's something very, very wrong with that. And sex trafficking looks different across the board. People aren't necessarily chained, especially in the Toronto context, even though it can happen. And we've seen that in the media that, there are people that are barricaded and they can't leave. But a lot of times, there's like the boyfriending technique where, pimps gain the trust of vulnerable youth in low-income communities, or just vulnerable youth who might be going through a rough season. I've heard information where, a pimp can be in a mall and there could be a group of friends and they know who to try to get their attention. there's certain things, certain indicators that they see that they're like, oh, I can, traffic this one. And they build their trust and manipulate them. And so I feel like, there's a huge misconception. A question that we get often is, why don't they just leave? And it's like,
Right.
yeah, we get that a lot. And they can't always leave. They're, if you think about the circle of violence, even when, talking about domestic violence or abuse, it also applies to trafficking, where, there's that honeymooning technique, and then, they start abusing them. And then, I'm sorry, baby, I love you. You just need to do this for me. And the cycle continues. And, a lot of survivors that actually come out, we cannot tell them that they've been trafficked. They have to come up with that themselves.
Wow.
A lot of times they don't even realize, they're like, that was my boyfriend, he loved me. He still loves me. And they don't realize that they've been brainwashed by this individual. And usually it takes years where they're like, oh my gosh, I think I was trafficked. And we don't try to label them. We want them to come to that for themselves. We want them to understand through their own empowerment that, I was wronged, and, I'm on this healing journey.
And I find that I find like the work that you're doing, it's not an overnight success story. Like, would you say that you journey with some of these individuals for quite a long time? What would be the average, roughly?
As long as they need help, we're here. We don't put a timestamp on an individual. We don't have our own safe house yet. It's a dream of ours to have a safe house one day.
Wow, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, because there isn't that many, actually, especially for ones that aren't age limited. Past a certain age, they can no longer stay in some of the safe houses that are out there. So you'd love to have one that's more open. But yeah, we don't put a timestamp on individuals, because how can you put a timestamp on healing?
Exactly.
When I think about healing, I think about an onion layer. It's like layer after layer. Even in my own life, healing has happened in phases. There's some seasons where you're more triggered than others.
Yeah.
So we would never want to close the door on an individual. Yeah. Unless they really say, it's my time to move on. Yeah. And that's what I love about Fight for Freedom. We're just here with that arm outstretched. A lot of times through even outreach, we'll meet with individuals and they'll go back to the industry, but they always know that we're here. And I think that is important. We're here for you when you come back.
I think a lot of people don't realize, the prevalence of Indigenous communities within this context. Indigenous communities make up 4% of our population, yet within the trafficking stats that are out there, it's between 50 to 70% of individuals who are trafficked are Indigenous. And so many people don't realize that the high prevalence rates, and also that there is such a large percentage that it is women, and girls, over 90%, but there still is boys, and there still is 2S LGBTQ plus individuals who are trafficked as well. And recruitment, recruitment can be really young. We've seen very, very young ages of recruitment out of low-income contexts, out of foster homes, for example, and the average is between 12 to 15, so young teenage for people who are exploited in trafficking.
Between 12 to 15, I just felt like I got punched there in the air. Between 12 years old and 15. That's the average age of grooming, you would say.
That's right.
My goodness. Okay, so let's shift gears ever so slightly, because I know that you're listening, you're watching, and if you're like me, if you have a pulse, you're just feeling the weight of this conversation. And so many of you usually reach out after saying, how can I be of help? What can I do? Or thinking, can I even make a difference in this huge beast that is sex trafficking? How can we as individuals play a role in helping? I know that this question comes up a lot. How can we tell the signs that someone's been sex trafficked? Anything you can give in terms of like tools for us?
Yeah, so great question regarding the signs. A lot of people ask about those signs of trafficking. And yeah, there's many out there. Traffickers target mostly young people who are longing for love. And so finding those individuals and then getting them in. Some of the signs that we would see are physical, so what are the physical signs? The person shows signs of abuse, bruising, burns on their body, different fractures, tattooing or branding that looks particularly different or strange, The person may seem malnourished, or maybe even it really does look like they need medical care. Some behavioral signs that we might notice: the person isn't allowed to speak for themselves, and their activities are controlled by somebody. I was going to a pizza place before the pandemic, and I right away, because I've been doing this for a while, but I identified it right away. There was a young man who came in with a very young girl, and he wouldn't let her order. He wouldn't let her sit until he told her to sit. And it's just obvious signs of something much more going on. And could it be trafficking? Possibly. And so noticing, someone who's avoiding eye contact, seems fearful around conversing with you, someone who may have substance use challenges, self-harm is one for sure. Wearing clothing that's not really appropriate for the situation or for the weather is another. What about emotional signs? The person may seem anxious, overly fearful, maybe a little bit too submissive, tense. Paranoid is a big one that I've seen quite often. Hypervigilant is another one. And some practical signs. Maybe the person doesn't have their own things or money. And like I mentioned, they are controlled by somebody else who has their wallet. A person doesn't have identification. They can't even control their own passport, for example. Maybe they move frequently from one location to the next. And possibly, and this has happened, we've had reports where someone's reported missing, and then someone shows up who looks similar. So to pay attention to these things, those signs that could be out there in our world. And so there's the Canadian National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-833-900-1010. There's also the website, Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline.ca. We have friends who work for the organization, and it's a great way to meet with somebody safe, confidential, and to begin to have conversations. In most police forces across the GTA, there is a division of trafficking. And so you can reach that particular division and, again, anonymously share your concerns, and they will give advice and feedback as to the way to best respond. But I think bigger than any of that is it really is about building relationship. And so how can we create safe places for people to want to spend time with us and to really be open to share about their own experiences? So, and that, safe space, what does it look like? It might look like decolonizing our minds. And so that includes active listening, asking open-ended questions, being willing to be a lifelong learner, continuing to explore new possibilities that are out there in the world, and just being available for individuals. And the more that people are willing to journey with somebody who's going through a difficult time, the more likelihood that someone will be ready to share and ready for help to leave.
So good. And I'm thinking about, there's a particular pillar that really it resonated with me as you were speaking, Mike, about support and aftercare, and I'd love to kind of dive into that, because that and then Felicia, you also were saying about having no time limit and tracking with people for as long as it takes. Can you give us some examples of what an individual who's sort of just freshly been rescued or freshly has come out of sexual exploitation and now they're in your hands, what does that support and aftercare look like?
So usually we do an intake process, and in that process, we just ask some questions, some deeper questions, whatever they feel comfortable with sharing. A lot of times they're afraid to share information because they're afraid that their pimp is going to find them. So we have to assess, though, like, okay, how much in danger are you? Like, are you in danger? How can we help you? Do we need to call the police? But sometimes the police could also scare them. So we have to be very, very careful with that. And then based on what they tell us their need is, and that's one thing, we try not to put words in their mouth. We want them to tell us what they need. And then based on that, we reach out to our networks and try to find them that support. And if we don't have it, we try to find it for them. And I think right now, the difference is that 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot that was happening with regards to fighting sex trafficking. Like, there was not much going on. But now there's so many more places that are supporting survivors. And so, even just letting them know that, that we will find you that support. There's, many different avenues where we can support, whether it's housing or needing like food and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think that with regards to rehabilitation, a lot of times they just need someone to listen. They need like counseling. So we're really grateful that we have a counselor on staff who's
Love it.
able to journey alongside survivors. And if we're full, we make sure that we find them a counselor elsewhere, someone who understands trauma. Yeah.
So good. And if they need lodging or a place to stay, you also will help try to connect them with all of that as well.
Yes, absolutely. There are some safe houses that we are connected to. And so we usually contact them. And if they do have space, we will make sure that they get there, make sure they have transportation to get there, and that they're in safe hands. Yeah.
Fantastic. That it sounds like it's really hands-on. I love that. And you know, I'm sitting here listening to you, Felicia, and I'm just wondering, Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts too. Was there ever a time, 10 years, this is a long road, right? This is a long road, probably very heartbreaking at times, very shocking to the system with some of what you're seeing. Was there ever a moment that the work got too hard for you? Did you ever feel like white flagging guys? And what, and if so, obviously you're here, what made you stay?
Yeah, I mean, like being on the front lines of something like this is not easy. And of course, the enemy will try to hit us in different ways. And there are some seasons that are harder than others, for sure. But we also realize that this is God's work. This is God's kingdom. And when you hear a survivor share about how much their life has been impacted, you can't go back from that. And this ministry is for the next generation to run with this and to know that even if you feel like you can't change the whole entire world, you can make a ripple in that ocean. You can help that one person, help that one individual. And I'm really big on that. You know, a lot of times we feel like we have to help the masses in order to make a difference. But you can make a difference in one person's life who has experienced something traumatic. And can you imagine the fruit of, you know, that I often find that like survivors, once they've been healed, they want to help other people get out of the industry. It's so common. Yeah. It's like, I want to help others that are in the situation that I was in. It just inspires me. I'm like, wow, you've gone through such a traumatic situation, but all you're thinking about is the friends you left behind. And, you know, I think about the 99 and 1. They're like, no, I still have sisters out there. I still have brothers out there. I want to spread the word. I want to see them get out. I know what it's like to be trafficked, and I don't want anyone else to experience that. And I feel like those experiences is what keeps me grounded. You know, when I see dreams being fulfilled, survivors being able to go back to school, empowering their voice, that's what keeps me grounded. God's light shines brightest in the darkest places. Being on outreach and having individuals say, wow, it's nice that, you know, someone remembers us, to let them know that they're not forgotten. And so, because I know it's God's ministry, even though, you know, hard seasons come, how can I walk away unless it's my season to walk away, or our season to walk away? And, you know, we're both pursuing clinical counseling, and we want to do therapy. And I have a huge heart to continue to journey alongside with those who have experienced trauma. There's not a lot of therapists, to my knowledge, that understands sex trafficking. And so I'd love to create a safe space for survivors to, you know, that I'm not going to judge them. So a lot of times, you know, because we talked about that racial piece, you know, there's systemic injustices that still happen. And, you know, can you imagine you're, you know, someone from the BIPOC community, you've gone through sexual exploitation, and, you know, you try to go to the doctor, or you try to go to, you know, some kind of system, you know, the police or something, and feel like you're not going to be believed or treated with dignity, you know? And so we're here to advocate. We're here to, you know, create a place and a voice for others. And even just to have someone sometimes to sit down with them in a doctor's appointment makes the world of a difference for somebody. To teach them how to use the bus and know that we're not going to judge you for that, you know? And that's a big thing too. Like, we try our very best to make sure that our volunteers and our staff and us ourselves treat each individual with that dignity.
For those that are here listening and they are in a tough time, what have you learned, Mike? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about God? What have you learned about others through your times of storms and hardship?
Yeah, storms come, and often when they're least expected. And they teach us about real gratitude, you know, what to be thankful for. Storms teach us about real joy, what brings us true joy and not surface level joy. You know, the storms teach us about peace, you know, how to maintain that, you know, sense of calmness in the midst of things that are just wild around us. Storms teach us where our treasure is.
Oh, I love
where the piece that matters most in our life. You know, storms teach us where our strength comes from. And storms teach us how to persevere. And so I think so much of Romans 5, you know, and when it speaks of, you know, suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame. Like it's such a powerful experience of a storm, though in it often feels overwhelming. We're clouded by the darkness. We hear the thunder and it's scary. And yet when we fix our eyes on the one who created us, he shows us that very clear purpose for some of these difficult things.
I'm just going to call the choir to come to sing We Have an Anchor in Flat. Can we just get the offering at this time as we get ready to close? We're going to open up the altars for prayer. Listen.
Felt that one in my gut.
He said, what now?
My legs were shaking. I'm like,
Mike, I think you need to also go back for preaching, teaching, pastorship. That was everything I needed to hear. Everything I needed to hear. And you know what? I never, ever do this. But just bullet point, please, just the storms teach us. Just say that all one more time, please. And thank you.
Storms teach us about gratitude. They teach us about joy. They teach us about peace. They teach us about where our real treasure is. And they teach us about strength and perseverance.
I am so glad that both of you are here today. Not only are you filled to the brim with compassion, but you have such weight behind you. You are so grounded in scripture, in your faith, in prayer. I guess you'd have to be in this line of work, because I can't imagine. We were even having, you know, we can share now, we were having some major difficulties, y'all. We were having some technical difficulties. And that is so like indicative of the opposition. Like just, it feels like the work of sex trafficking is sometimes an uphill, you know, battle, lots of pushing. You need a lot of hands in the plow. You need a lot of support. It's such a machine. It's bigger than one person. I'd love to ask you now, like, how can we as a community, those that are listening, those that have stumbled onto the podcast, those that got it through a share, how can we help you? You know, you're this married couple strapping this mission on your back. How can we support? How can we help in donations, fundraising, any events coming up? Please let us know anything that we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can volunteer with us. That would be wonderful. Like we said before, we have various outreach initiatives, street outreach, online ministry. There's just so much that we're doing. So if you're interested, fill out a form on our website, www.fight4freedom.ca. Yeah, come out to our events. We actually have a walking event where we're hoping to raise, I believe, over $20,000 for the work that we do. So come on out, pray with us, walk with us, given the COVID restrictions, obviously, but there are different teams. So find a team that is close to you and join us. And financially, that would be amazing, because of course the survivors need your help. We can't run without financial support. And so please, if you can donate. All of our staff are support-raised missionaries. So if you see a staff that God lays on your heart, there's a drop-down menu, support them per month, because they're doing phenomenal work. And not all of us are 100% supported. So please help us, help join in. Remember, you can help by just helping one individual. And if you can't go yourself, send. So send those that are doing the work firsthand. And so thank you for your considerations. Yeah.
Yeah, you're listening to this conversation, you've been watching it, and if the thought of someone being held against their will or being trafficked against their will or not being allowed to leave, being oppressed in any way, if any of this conversation has pricked your heart, would you consider being a partner for Fight for Freedom today? Think about a donation of any size. There is nothing too small, nothing too large. And, you know, one of the things that I love about these moments is we can't all, I know we'd love to all run to the street and find a way to just touch and reach these people who are just so needing of it, but we can't. Not everyone can do that, but you can be present by extension. You can be, you can make a difference by extension, and your giving empowers those who are in a place to do this kind of intentional one-on-one work to do that. And so why don't you consider this 2021 season, guys, this beautiful fall season, to make a difference. Maybe pray with your family, pray with your prayer group, get some women together, get some guys together, and make a donation to Fight for Freedom. Remember, it's for freedom.ca. And also, where can we find you on social media, guys?
Yeah, both Facebook and Instagram. We have Fight Freedom CA as the hashtag or the line. And so you can follow us in both venues.
So Fight Freedom.
Fight for Freedom CA. Oh.
Fight for Freedom CA. Beautiful. Well, guys, you have been such a blessing, such a joy. I want to give you guys the last word. Anything on your heart you want to share with those that are listening and watching?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in and hearing some of the realities of what people may experience in our city and world. And very often it can be quite jarring. It can be quite eye-opening. However, there is a work to combat this that is growing, and it is extremely encouraging to see the effort that is coming out. I also just want to mention, the power of prayer. Yes, we had some technical issues today, and there's teams behind us just praying and supporting this work, and that causes such a tremendous impact. So as you're thinking about how you might be able to help, maybe you can't volunteer, maybe you're not able to offer finance, but your prayer can help this ministry to go where it needs to go and help the people in need.
I love that. Well, listen, I got a surprise question for you. You didn't prepare for it because I like keeping you on the spot. I like keeping you on your toes.
Yeah.
This is a finish this sentence question, and I really think it's so perfect for the conversation that we're having. So in light of this whole topic of anti-sex trafficking, reaching out, people being local urban missionaries, really, I'd love you to finish this sentence. Both of you will each have an opportunity. What is it time for? So you're going to say it's time for blank. So Mike, it's time for?
It's time for justice.
I love it. I love it. Felicia, it's time for?
It's time for people to have voice.
I love it. And now we're going to flip it. And this time, when you answer, feel free to unpack it just a little bit for us, because people will want to hear the story behind your answer. What is it not time for? Mike, what is it not time for, and why?
It is not a time for apathy. Our world is in chaos, pandemic, natural disasters. Really needs us to reach out to others and check in on others and love well.
Beautiful. Felicia, for you?
It's not a time to do nothing. There is something that every person can do. And God has given us all talents. What is your talent? Use it for the kingdom. God has equipped each of us to do something. So refrain from that urge to do nothing. Do something.
I love that. Do something. Mike and Felicia, thank you so much for being on the path. You are such a blessing. And I want to thank you on behalf of our entire team for believing in me, believing in my voice, as you said so perfectly, Felicia, empowering my voice to help make a difference. We're going to shake the world. We're just getting started.
Yeah.
Y'all strap in, keep your hands inside the vehicle at all times. Because we are going to do some great work. I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for believing in us. It means the world. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you for believing in us. It means the world to us.
Absolutely. So guys, thank you for being on the path. And ladies and gentlemen, that is it for now. But listen, more to come with Fight for Freedom. And I want to encourage you again, check them out at fightforfreedom.ca or go to Instagram or Facebook, Fight for Freedom CA. Check them out. God bless you. Wow, what an incredible conversation with Mike and Felicia. I want to thank them for stopping by, thank them for sharing their hearts, and also encouraging us on how we can make a difference in our own local communities. Guys, fightforfreedom.ca and so many other organizations are doing such great work, but you and I can be world changers and difference makers in our own community. And that's what this podcast is always about. It's about encouraging you to make a difference. You know, human trafficking is a growing problem in our country. 68% of police reported trafficking cases between 2009 to 2018 were within Canada's borders. That means within the nation of Canada, the majority of that was taking place. And the age of recruitment, this is what shook me, guys, is as low as 12 years old. I know that we can make a difference. If we're not there intentionally with presence, we can do it through prayer. We can do it through finances. Why don't you consider making a donation once again to fightforfreedom.ca. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, in this season 3. Tell a friend. We are changing the world one conversation at a time. Thank you so much. In the meantime, keep living, keep learning, keep loving, and let's keep making a difference. I will see you on the path.
Thank you for listening to On the Path podcast with Cheryl Nemhard, brought to you by Fight for Freedom, educating, empowering, and equipping community members by raising awareness and training others surrounding the issues of sex trafficking. For more information or to donate, go to fightforfreedom.ca. Please like, download, and subscribe. This has been an Exousia Media production.